In 1877, Mark Twain developed a term called the Gilded Age to describe America's state. This means the country looked nice from the outside, but inside there were many problems. The Gilded Age was noted mainly for political corruption. There were influential government officials that were covering up scandals. Ulysses S. Grant was the President of the United States during the time of many scandals. He was the head of the Grant administration and was blamed for most scandals. During this time, people were extremely power-hungry and greedy. The greed was normal and people were used to it. In fact, Grantism, a term they developed that is synonymous with greed and corruption, was used. This term was used by historians to describe the era. The leading factors of the corruption were rapid immigration, the urban boom, and high demands for steel. Andrew Carnegie made his fortune in steel when he started building the Transcontinental Railroad. The main scandals under Grant were the Whiskey Ring, the Indian Ring, and the Credit Mobilier. The Whiskey Ring was a group of distillers and government officials who plotted to steal the liquor taxes to keep for themselves. After the Civil War, liquor taxes, along with many others, were increased in efforts to pay for the war revenue. The distillers mainly operated in St. Louis, Chicago, and Milwaukee. The distillers bribed government officials with a percentage of the stolen taxes to allow them to defraud the government and take the money. Benjamin Bristow, the Secretary of Treasury, noticed money was missing. He then appointed Treasury officials to investigate the government workers involved in the scandal. Once Bristow gathered enough evidence, he exposed the scandal in May of 1875. Over $3 million tax dollars were recovered, 238 persons indicted, and 110 persons convicted. Of those indicted was Orville E. Babcock, Grant's private secretary. It was believed by the court that Babcock used the illegally held money from the scandal to fund the Republican Party's campaign for the re-election of Grant. Babcock was acquitted after Grant testified to his innocence. An example of a smaller yet significant scandal in the government in the Gilded Age is the Indian Ring scandal in 1875. With Ulysses S. Grant as president and William W. Belknap as the Secretary of War, Belknap was found to be involved in the corruption. According to many historical sources, Belknap had taken bribes from companies to receive licenses so that companies can trade with Indians on the reservations. Money and more opportunities were the main motives for both Belknap and the companies. Belknap was well known for his involvement in flat-out corruption and spendthrift parties. In the year 1876, the House of Representatives impeached Belknap, however, it was overturned by the Senate. The Credit Mobilier was one of the major scandals that took place in 1864. During the Credit Mobilier, the American government offered to assist in the building of the railroad, though nobody took up on the offer due to daunting conditions and threats of conflict with rival Indian tribes. Durant coined the Credit Mobilier as a loan and charter company, with the help of George Francis Train, as an attempt to purposefully present the government and the United States citizens with the appearance that it had been chosen by the Union Pacific Railroad. They did this to overcharge taxpayers and pocket the excess funds. It led to the people in powerful positions taking advantage of the common person and the ignorance of the American government by pocketing funds that were supposed to go towards the creation of the railroad. Overall, the leaders of the scandal pocketed over $19 million. This was done under the genius financial mind of Thomas Durant, Vice President of the Union Pacific Railroad. Thomas Durant is credited for single-handedly creating the structure that made the Credit Mobilier scandal possible.
What were the negative and positive consequences of the Gilded Age?
I think the negative outcomes from the Gilded Age was we saw a lot of business as usual type things until we started getting up towards Theodore Roosevelt. Political parties were still corrupt. A lot of local government was still very corrupt. Urbanization was still allowing horrible conditions in cities. When we start looking at positives that came out of it, we saw new inventions being created. We saw the country growing. We saw a lot of immigration that was still coming into the country that was building our workforce. Not so much of the skilled labor, but we were still growing the workforce in the country.